Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. In recent days, XRP price has been holding up rather well as terrible news came out having to do with Fed Chair Jerome Powell announcing that in terms of interest rate hikes, yeah, there's going to be more, and then Silvergate Bank falling apart, and then Silicon Valley Bank falling apart. XRP held up incredibly well. In fact, was moving up for much of that. Eventually, all of the terrible news became too much, and XRP eventually started to move a little bit to the downside. But XRP has been among the best performers for much of the last week, actually. And it's just a hair down at the time that I'm recording this over the last 24 hours, but not by much. But if you want to know what's going to be happening in terms of XRP price action, what you really need to focus on, especially for this upcoming week, and especially for tomorrow, because tomorrow could be an absolute whirlwind, depending on a number of factors, which I'm going to run through with you. What you need to be watching is what happens regarding Silicon Valley Bank. There's talks of a potential bailout, and there's also warnings from all sorts of individuals that if there isn't some sort of resolution or some sort of assurance that depositors are going to be able to, be made whole, get their deposits back, if there isn't some sort of assurance, some are warning that it could result in bank runs on thousands of banks. And so I don't know if that's a bit much. That's doomsday sounding. But the theory effectively is, and I'll get into the specifics as we go through the video, but the theory is in a nutshell that people being spooked by what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, having less confidence in their own regional banks, smaller institutions, and fleeing to the relative safety of much larger banks like JP Morgan, for example, which would crush all sorts of small and regional banks in theory. So I'm not saying about it, I'm just telling you what's on the news. But regardless of what ends up happening, and I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know for sure. This is just what you need to be aware of. Like, things are going to develop. It's a very fluid situation. And I'm telling you, news is coming tomorrow, because one way or another, because either there's going to be a bailout or there's not. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, XRP is at 36 cents, Bitcoin at $20,612, market cap for the asset class $962 billion, and Bitcoin dominance at 41.36%. So, most cryptocurrencies being pretty chill over the weekend here. But let's take a look over here at USDC. It's still depegged. It's worth 96 cents. Should be $1, but it's worth 96 cents. In case you had missed the news the other day, it actually got down as low as 87 cents. The reason that happened is because Circle, which backs USDC, USD coin, they had billions of dollars in Silicon Valley Bank, which has failed. And that caused massive fear, resulting in the price of USDC just plummeting down to 87 cents in relatively short order. That also caused stablecoin DAI to plummet in price as well. And it got down as low as maybe 92 cents or so. It didn't get quite, or no, I think maybe it was 89 cents. I'm kind of pulling from memory. It doesn't matter. The point is it went down in kind. And the reason that it went down, and I didn't know this until I was looking into it the other day, because I've never used stablecoins. I don't have interest in using them. Hopefully I never am in a situation where I think I need to use them. Maybe it'll happen. I'm just not a big fan of stablecoins. But setting that aside, so I don't know a ton about stablecoins. But DAI, as it turns out, is backed by USDC. That's right. So a stablecoin backed by a stablecoin, which is backed by fiat currency in an insolvent bank. Good times, everybody. Good times. Well, a round of applause, everybody. Well done there. And Tether, another stablecoin, has been reaping the benefits, currently worth $1.01. So it's a bit of a premium at the moment. And here you got the crypto fear and greed index at 33 out of 100. So participants in the space pretty spooked as is. Now take a look at this. Pantera, Paradigm, Andreessen Horowitz might be affected by Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And this was actually revealed by this Twitter account, Woo Blockchain, with 262,000 followers. They noted that there are some crypto-specific funds here. So A16Z, which is Andreessen Horowitz. Yeah, it's Horowitz. Okay. Andreessen Horowitz My mouth was this hard today. So there's Andreessen Horowitz, which is A16Z. Then there's also Paradigm and also Pantera. And so these are some of the crypto funds that purportedly are, they had some massive funds in Silicon Valley Bank, which shouldn't be surprising because we know that Silicon Valley Bank was very crypto friendly. But anyway, so here's the tweet from Wu Blockchain. Unverified US SEC ADV file data shows that A16Z related funds in Silicon Valley Bank was $2.85 billion as of May 6, 2022. Paradigm related funds, $1.72 billion, January 13th, 2023. And Pantera related funds, $560 million, February 3rd, 2023. So when you're talking about, I'm not as familiar with Paradigm. I've heard of Paradigm, but Pantera is a hedge fund. They're actually the first cryptocurrency, initially just Bitcoin, hedge fund in the United States. So they've been around for a good decade at this point. And I know they're one of the bigger ones. What's that going to mean for the world of crypto? To what degree is this contagion going to spread if, and it is an if, those funds don't quickly get back to Pantera? What's that going to mean? Is there going to be basically a run on a hedge fund in terms of, people want to get out of their positions? This thing can be an absolute mess. And that's why I was saying, if you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow and really throughout the week, you got to focus on what's happening with Silicon Valley Bank. This is the most important factor to focus on in the short term, at least. So take a look at this. From Cointelegraph, Silicon Valley Bank failure could trigger run on U.S. regional banks. Federal Reserve and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, decisions concerning the future of Silicon Valley Bank may affect regional banks across the United States, putting trillions of dollars at risk of a bank run, said former Bridgewater executive and CEO of investment firm Unlimited, Bob Elliott. In a Twitter thread on March 11th, Elliott stated that nearly a third of deposits in the United States are held in small banks, and around 50% are uninsured. And here's a quote: "The FDIC insures small deposits in all the banks in the United States, but that only covers about $9 trillion of the nearly $17 trillion of outstanding deposit base. Under the hood, the coverage rate is roughly 50% across most institutions, while credit unions are higher, not above." So that's a bit of a problem because, if you're a typical United States citizen, you got your checking account, you probably don't have anywhere near $250,000 to sit in the account, in which case, even if the bank goes under, you're covered, super duper. What about the businesses utilizing these banks? It doesn't take much for a business to far exceed that, even a small business. You think even if there's a 5 or 10 person company, how many salaries does it take to get above that threshold? You can kind of just quickly in your mind run through, okay, and that's just considering one aspect of running a business. So lots of factors here, but this would, see, that's why about half that is stated here, not covered by FDIC, not insured. That's a serious problem. So I understand they're talking about the concerns here, and then they're talking about effectively people fleeing to larger banks. And I don't know about you, I'll speak for myself here, and maybe I eat these words and I'm crying tomorrow or in a few days, but I've been a small business owner since 2010. My brother and I own a business, and we use a bank that's in the region, and to me, subjectively, they seem rather large. Subjectively, I'm not going to share any additional information on that. I like to keep that private if I may, but I'll just tell you, knowing this particular bank, and I think this is probably the case for many banks, perhaps most banks, I think that you tend to have you tend to cater not, there's some, okay, so let me word it. There's some banks that cater to specific industries. If those industries are having a bad time, then yeah, you could have a bunch of withdrawals and you could have a bank run, which by the way is what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, which caters to the tech sector. But many banks, if not most banks, cater to a broad variety of industries, in which case, even if an industry here or there is having a bad day, and they're pulling out funds to make sure that they can continue to fund themselves, they need to pull that money out, or they got expenses, whatever it may be. Even if that's the case, you're not going to have a run on the bank because you have broad exposure to pretty much every industry under the sun. And so I'm sitting here looking at this as a business owner, been with the same bank for the entirety of the time, have a good relationship with them. and just my local branches that I interact with. They're kind of big, but it's like I'd say regional. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, knowing the broad exposure that they have, is it really the case that there's going to be a run on my bank tomorrow? Is that really the case? Is that remotely probable? And that's going to be done the world over, and then not the world over, but the United States over, and then what? As of like in the span of a day or two, now there's like a handful of banks remaining. It's basically the J.P. Morgan types, and there are no small banks anymore. I look at this, and to me, I'm just like, it seems like a bit too much fear. And maybe I eat those words, and maybe I'm crying, in the future because I didn't move my funds to the biggest banks on the planet where all the other money is going. Maybe I don't really buy into this, to be honest with you. I don't think that's how life works. I think most businesses, in a general sense, they're happy with the relationships they have with their banking partners. It's a hassle to move and switch to another bank and change everything. It impacts all sorts of stuff in terms of linking up with payroll. It's just a huge hassle. It's just an annoyance. And so if you're a business, maybe some people are going to get spooked by this. Is it going to be the herds running? I don't know. Now, if that happens, the reason that I'm even talking about this, if that happens, you're going to have risk on assets taking it. You're going to have the stock market plummeting. You're going to have crypto taking a massive hit. Maybe you do take out those November lows of roughly 15,500 for Bitcoin. But I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I'm just saying, in a scenario where it would happen, that's on the table again, I think. I'm just not, but that's how big of a deal it would be. I'm just not convinced necessarily it would. I think some people are getting a bit too fearful, a bit too quick. Now, and I'm not saying there wouldn't be additional bank runs, but what I would say is I don't think that it's going to be, dispersed evenly throughout the nation. It would be for, if there's other, banks that are maybe heavy on tech, maybe they should be fearful. Maybe there are some other industries that I'm unaware of that should be fearful. Hey, actually, we're having hard times too, and we have a very specific customer base. Maybe we should be fearful. I could see that. So maybe I wouldn't be surprised to see more bank runs. But if you're talking about just, the general small to mid-sized bank that has broad exposure to a bunch of different industries, I don't really buy that. And maybe I'm wrong. And again, I could eat my words. I just don't buy it right now. Anyway, piece continues though. According to Fed data, small banks in the United States had $6.8 trillion in assets and $680 billion in equity as of February 2023. Considering this scenario, a failure on the tech bank would put in risk of a run on thousands of small banks, further making the SVB situation a Main Street problem, said Elliott. I still think that's too much, but maybe I'm wrong. Elliott's comments were among many others seen on social media channels over the weekend as fear surrounded the future of the California bank. A petition created by Y Combinator CEO Gary Tan claims that nearly 40,000 of all depositors at Silicon Valley Bank are small businesses. If swift action isn't taken, over 100,000 people could soon lose their jobs, end quote, says the document, urging regulators to step in and implement a backstop for depositors. Now, in terms of that seems totally plausible. It's not like I could know whether or not those numbers are accurate, but that seems completely plausible. That part absolutely does. I'm just telling you, I am taking currently 0 steps to switch my bank to switch my checking account to a bigger bank and all the funds. For my company. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Oh, I hope that doesn't bite me. But I really I that strongly feel like it's not going to happen. I think that you could see some bank runs, but for the general bank that just has a broad customer base, all sorts of industries, I just don't see that happening. And they're all going to happen to run for the largest bank. It's just okay. And then there was this from Cointelegraph. Bill Ackman warns U.S. government, fix mistake in 48 hours or face destruction. Billionaire Bill Ackman has urged the United States government to guarantee all deposits held by Silicon Valley Bank within the next 48 hours, or it risks the destruction of many financial institutions. In a March 11th tweet, Bill Ackman, CEO of hedge fund management firm Pershing Square Capital Management, said a giant sucking sound will be heard from the withdrawal of substantially all uninsured deposits from all banks, not just the systemically important banks, quote, and that's the end of the quote, should the government fail to guarantee all of SVB's deposits before the open on Monday. So here's another individual, and again, maybe he's right, and then I end up crying tomorrow. That would suck, but it sucks to suck, But the idea of all of the banks throughout the country unrelated to these specific sectors, I'm not so confident of that. Of course, we may not end up finding out, though. And the reason I say that is there is word that the government may step in to make sure that depositors don't end up taking the shaft on this. So here is a headline from Bloomberg. U.S. discusses fund to backstop deposits if more banks fail. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, and the Federal Reserve are weighing creating a fund that would allow regulators to backstop more deposits at banks that run into trouble following Silicon Valley Bank's collapse. Regulators discussed the new special vehicle in conversations with banking executives, according to people familiar with the matter. The hope is that setting up such a vehicle would reassure depositors and help contain any panic, said the people. They asked not to be identified because the talks weren't public. And so, folks, this is why I'm saying, like, if you want to know what's going to happen on Monday, you got to be following this right here. And of course, with banks closed over the weekend here, not much additional is going to happen in terms of, panic movement, setting up new accounts with these massive banks like JP Morgan. That wasn't going to happen yesterday or today. It's the weekend. Banks are closed. But it makes you wonder here, is the government going to step in? And if they do, well, then you're not going to have to worry about any of that. Then you just get the whole separate conversation of, should the government be stepping in, this or that? Should they be bailing out any banks or depositors? Now, it doesn't look like the bank itself is going to be bailed out. It looks like the bank's dead. As far as I know, and we'll see what happens, but I'd be surprised if the bank itself gets bailed out. It seems more like depositors would just be made whole. So, but don't know for sure. But that's what it looks like. Now, if you want to hear my thoughts on this concept of the bailout, if you hadn't checked out the first video I put out today, which had to do with the fact that Ripple likely has money in collapsed bank, Silicon Valley Bank. Check out that video. It was 2 videos ago. I put it out today. And if you're curious, I just think it's an interesting topic for conversation and people get fiery about this one. And that's fine. So, like, whether you agree with me or disagree on the topic, totally fine. I think it's fair game to discuss here. But it's highly consequential for what's happening specifically in crypto now, because Ripple, I do think it's highly likely, and for reasons I cited in the video, that they do have money at Silicon Valley Bank. So what happens here could have direct impact on all of us as XRP holders, and I break down the reasons why in that video. So I encourage you to check it out. Plus, it's just kind of fun to have the little critical thinking exercise on that topic, and then kind of debating people on, should there be, even if not bailouts for banks, should there be, vehicles, monetary, I guess, fiscal vehicles to make sure that depositors are going to be made whole after this whole situation. Because, you're talking about these depositors. A lot of them are small businesses, as cited, in this video, in that article from Cointelegraph. A lot of small businesses here employing real people with real families, and then suddenly they don't get paychecks. And and if it spreads from there, if they're right, it could be very bad. And then all of the risk on assets like stocks and crypto will absolutely take a beating. Now, if the government does step in here, I don't think you're going to be seeing equities or crypto taking a beating. Well, not for those reasons anyway. Crypto is in a precarious situation currently regardless, so we'll see what happens. But if we could actually stop this from happening, that would be a notable event. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.